A while ago, I went to the wedding of two of my closest friends, Josh and Ariana. Shout out to both of them. They're probably watching because they're just very supportive and good friends, but I actually got to be in their wedding. And I had known Ariana for longer, so I ended up standing for the wedding itself on the bride's side, but for the weekend, I hung out with the groomsmen because I'm a guy, and it just made a lot more sense than doing makeup and painting nails. So that's what I did. And I ended up meeting this guy there that was also a part of the bridal party who practiced Islam. He's a friend of one of my best friends. And so we were all kind of hanging out together, and being the person that I am, I just asked him about some of the elements of his faith. And I think that when I'm doing things like this, I try my best to find some common ground or find something I respect about the other faith so that they know I'm not trying to attack them. I'm just trying to learn, trying to understand. And then they're much more receptive later if I want to bring up some counterpoints. But I try and be friendly up front. And one of the things that I respect the most about the Islamic faith is their prayer life. They have a very dedicated, consistent prayer life. And I think Christians often struggle with this, keeping consistent prayer going. It's something we can let slide every once in a while. So I think that they do it a little too ritualistically, and that often it can come to mean less to the individual person, the way that Muslims do this. But I do appreciate that prayer is a big tenet of their faith, and they seem to be fairly consistent with keeping to that. But as he was explaining some of the prayers and what they mean and at what times they do them, he mentioned offhandedly, said, I can't do it in the bathroom. He's like, I could pray anywhere I want, but obviously I'm not going to do it in the bathroom because we're not allowed. And he said this as if I agreed with him, but it was something I had never actually thought of before. Can you pray in the bathroom? Obviously, for an Islamic person, you cannot. I looked this up. They do have certain rules where if the building you're in has a bathroom within so many feet of you, or if the room you're in has a toilet in it, it's okay, because you should still pray. But if you're going to the bathroom, or if you are, there's different levels of severity. So some say if you're anywhere near a bathroom, you do not pray. It's better to forego the prayer than to risk disrespecting Allah in their case. And so I looked into this a little bit because I'm not sure what Christians actually teach on this. I know what I do, I know what I practice, and I know what probably most people would think, but I wasn't sure if this was something that had come across people's minds before. And I also wanted to look into Judaism, the big three, see where we are similar, see where we differ. And I wanted to know the reasons why. Now, full disclosure, I have prayed in the bathroom before. As a guy, you spend a decent amount of time in there. Even if you're not going to the bathroom, just getting ready, whatever it is, you spend a lot of time in the bathroom. And so I have prayed before in the bathroom. And it's not something where I think, okay, I'm going to the bathroom, now's my prayer time. But it just happens, God is on my mind. And so as I'm doing all things throughout the day, including going to the bathroom, there's the potential for prayer. And I looked it up. The average person, according to a few websites I looked up, spends 92 days of their life going to the bathroom. That's not time spent in the bathroom, like getting ready, showering, bathing. That's actually going to the bathroom, number one or number two. As far as using it, I was surprised most sites listed that men are in the bathroom a lot longer than women are. Now, I know it's more of a tendency for guys to hang out in the bathroom. We're the ones that will read or play on our phones or whatever. We just spend a lot of time in the bathroom. We just kind of see it as an escape from everything else. We lock the door and play a video game or something. And so I understood that, but also I thought the assumption was women take longer in the bathroom. I think that's a complaint that people have about women all the time. Now, I've not really seen it one way or the other because I'm not married, so I don't really have a complaint towards women, but I just thought that was something people say about women. Oh, they take too much time in the bathroom. But actually, men spend an average of 2 years and 125 days in the bathroom. Now, that's whatever they're doing. They could be bathing, showering, brushing their teeth, whatever. Women, it's 2 years and 40 days, so significantly less. But either way, all of us, men or women, we're spending a lot of time in the bathroom. And so it's standard reasoning to think that perhaps you have also, in that 2 years, 125 days, or 2 years and 40 days, also, if you're a Christian, thought about God in the bathroom. Sometimes even in the shower, it's it's a calm time. It's a time, there's a whole hashtag that was going on for a while called shower thoughts. And so it's it makes sense that if you're a Christian, your thoughts are going to stray to God sometimes. That could lead to prayer or even meditation on the Bible, which is also forbidden in Islam, to be studying the Qu'ran or the holy texts while you're in the bathroom. And so I wanted to look up, what was this like in Jesus' time? What was the thought on all of this? Do we have record of it? Surprisingly, we do, and I think it is so fascinating. I'm not trying to be disrespectful here. I know it's a fine line between like you're poking fun at things and you're talking about bathroom humor and whatever. I'm not trying to do that. It was a genuine question I had about what we do and what we believe and why we do and believe those things. And so this was the study, and I hope you find it interesting because I surprisingly just thought it was absolutely fascinating. So what was going on in Jesus' time? Well, Ecclesiastes 5:1 says, "Guard your feet or legs when walking to the house of God." Now, I would read this and say, I don't know what that means exactly. Maybe it's something with like your robes or your clothing, like make sure not to trip or something. But the Talmud actually suggests that legs is a euphemism for bladder and bowels. So it's a common interpretation that you are, Ecclesiastes here, Koheleth, the wise teacher, is saying to use the bathroom before praying or studying. So when you're going to approach God, you guard your legs against defecation or urination. So that's the interpretation the Talmud gives. Now, the Mishnah argues about this because they say that the ruling was, if you can wait to use the bathroom for the time it would take to walk 2.5 miles, which I think is a Sabbath day journey or something like that, then you can go ahead and pray. And they calculated this out to be about 72 minutes. So if you're sitting there, you're like, man, I really have to go to the bathroom, but I also need to pray. Could I wait 72 minutes before I would have to go or be literally peeing on myself? If I could wait 72 minutes, then okay, I can go ahead and pray. And there's an argument about this in the Mishnah that's so interesting. It goes back and forth, where some say you don't actually have to wait the 72 minutes. You just have to know that you could wait this long. And this also applies to passing gas. So you wake up in the morning, you're like, man, I got to relieve myself. I got to go to the bathroom. You better do that before you pray. Now, some people have this idea of Judaism that they'd wake up and before their eyes were even open, they would say a prayer. And this is true. They did have a lot of prayers set for specific times. But if you had to use the bathroom and could not wait 72 minutes, there was a big debate going on prior to the time of Jesus and even in Jesus' time about how long you had to wait before using the bathroom or how long you had to believe you could wait before using it. So I thought this was really interesting. There's also a specific prayer. I mentioned before all these different prayers that they would recite at different times of the day. There's a specific prayer you would recite upon exiting the bathroom. It's called Asher Yatzar, and it is this: "Blessed are you, Adonai our God, King of the universe, who formed man with wisdom and created within him many openings and many hollow spaces. It is obvious and known before your seat of honor that if even one of them would be opened, or if even one of them would be sealed, it would be impossible to survive and to stand before you even for 1 hour. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh and acts wondrously." So it's a recognition of, yes, God, I just went to the bathroom and you formed me this way, and thank you for the ability to relieve myself and to function normally. And so this was something that devout Jewish people, specifically learned Jews, would recite after using the bathroom. And so it's possible that Jesus might have even said this prayer, or that he had heard it and people around him had said it. There's also something that some people say that you should say before going to the bathroom, and this can be found in Barakot 60b, which is a section of the Talmud and the Mishnah, and it says this: "One who enters a latrine should say to the ministering angels who accompany him," and this is what you should say, "Be honored, honored and holy ones who serve the Most High. Give glory to the God of Israel. Leave me while I enter and do my will," or relieve myself, "then I will come to you." But there's argument about this too. Rabbi Abaye objects to this. He says, "Do not tell them to leave, but instead tell them to guard you." And so even at Jesus' time, they're talking about what do we do about this? What do we do about going to the bathroom while we pray? We're a very prayerful people. Our mind is constantly on the things of God. And also, this didn't just relate to prayer, it also related to studying Torah. You weren't allowed to say God's name. Some people argue that you could pray, but you weren't allowed to say the name of God or anything that remotely related to Torah, which I'm not sure how you'd pray if that was the stipulation. You couldn't say things like shalom because that's not just a greeting, it's a name for God himself. So a lot of restrictions, and often, it's common for people to read in the bathroom. This is something that's been going on for years and years and years. And so instead, to refocus their minds away from Torah, sometimes they would bring other reading material into the bathroom. And I don't know for a fact, but this could have been where this started, reading in the bathroom. Now, it might have been way before that, but it's true that in order to distract their minds off of Torah so that they weren't profaning it, they would bring something else into the bathroom to read from. And this is just crazy interesting to me that I've very rarely thought of this, and yet this has been a common discussion and argument for generations. In the Old Testament, we also have discussions on the uncleanness of bowel movements. So Deuteronomy 23 tells the Israelites that if they're going, specifically this is about like war camps moving around, it says if you're going to have to go to the bathroom, go outside of the camp and bring a shovel with you and bury it. And the reason it lists is that God is in the camp, walking amongst them, and doesn't want to step in it, which that itself is really interesting. But it wasn't, it was unclean, but it wasn't necessarily unholy. So it was unclean literally because it's defecation, but also ceremonially, even though it didn't make you ritually unholy, unclean, or unable to participate in worship if you had done it. If this was the case, man, imagine having a baby. You're a mother with a baby, you'd like to participate in worship, and you don't even know when the baby's going to go to the bathroom. You could be ceremonially making everybody around you unclean by the proximity of that baby's defecation. That's not the case. It happened. They knew it happened. The principle was deal with it in a respectful and private manner. Get it out of the camp. It's unclean, both physically and ceremonially. It's not respectful to be pooping in the presence of people or the presence of God. But there's some things to consider. Because typically, like I said, admittedly, I have gone to the bathroom and I have prayed before. I have scrolled through the Bible app on my phone. Like that's a common occurrence. And so what changed and why do we believe that now it's probably okay? Well, it's not okay, first of all, if you are doing it in a disrespectful manner. If you're thinking, the only time I'm ever going to pray to God is when I'm on the toilet. Well, you probably have the wrong attitude then. That's not what is meant to happen. It's not even supposed to be something where you go in there and you think intentionally like this is my prayer time. It's also not something that can be castigated to the point where you think I cannot do this. Is it the best place to pray? No, not necessarily. Is it a wrong place to pray? No, absolutely not. So what to consider here? When Jesus came onto the scene, a lot of things changed. Yes, God is still God. We have to meet him respectfully, but our relationship with God is so much more personal now after Jesus Christ's time than it ever was. Even the fact of like calling God Father, Abba in Hebrew or Aramaic, this was something that just like screamed intimate act. It was unheard of. Yes, in ancient Israel, they could call him Father of all or Father of the universe. That's absolutely true. But to have an intimate father-son or father-daughter relationship with God was unheard of until Jesus used it in the Lord's Prayer. So he's actually expressing the closeness in prayer itself. God also, he made us. He's familiar with our bowel movements and bathroom routines, and he sees everything, and he actually made it work that way. Even Jesus comments on this a little bit. He says, like, what goes into a man doesn't defile him, but what comes out of a man does, speaking of his words. But he says, it goes into the body, like it's talking about like Pharisees not washing their hands. It goes into the body, it's kind of digested, and then it comes out. It's thrown away, right? So he's familiar with it. He speaks on it. That doesn't mean that necessarily it's the respectful place to go and pray, but he's not ashamed of it. It's not something he's unaware of or just like tries to stay far away from. And this is also, we can know this is true because Jesus himself was God and yet was man. He had to use the bathroom. And so did God's presence or the nature of God leave Jesus Christ whenever he had to go to the bathroom? No, absolutely not. He was God, and he still used the bathroom. Also, laws of ceremonial uncleanness in the Old Testament, we have to remember, we're not supposed to be hindrances to God. If you're thinking about it like this, we're thinking about it wrong. These were supposed to be rules for our benefit in staying respectful to him. It's the tendency of man to get much more flippant as we get much more close in connection and in relation. So God was coming into the camp of Israel, and these were laws to say, yes, you're close to God now, but you don't disrespect him. And so these are what these laws are. But when Jesus came onto the scene, he cleansed those who were unclean. Think of the woman with the issue of blood. This was unclean, and yet Jesus has no problem with her being in contact with him. He heals those who were unable to participate in congregational worship, like the lepers, and he drew near to sinners and tried to reconcile them to himself. So he draws low to us in our low state. This is very different. This is not approaching God disrespectfully at a shameful or less than ideal time. This is God has drawn near to us, and so don't hide yourself away further. The veil at Jesus Christ's death was torn in two, symbolizing a constant access to God's presence. We can always go before him at any time, but we need to be doing it respectfully, not flippantly, just because we have this closeness. So if that's your state, then I would say maybe praying or studying in the bathroom is probably not the best thing. But if it's just a closeness thing, an intimacy thing, then there's nothing wrong with it either. Another thing that we should consider, the Spirit of God lives in us. It's not like the Spirit of God waits at the door while we go to the bathroom, right? It's always within us. And so we cannot remove ourselves, like all of our lives are given over to God, not just the times where we're in church dressed nicely and trying to act respectable, but also in all the other times of our life, and that includes going to the bathroom. And then also in the New Testament, there's the principle of praying continually. Paul tells this to the Thessalonians, and he tells a lot of churches that he's praying continually for them. That's always. So you're always, now it doesn't mean that this is the only time you pray, that you never have to get on your knees and actually do formal prayer to God. That's not the case. But there's a constant connection that's always there, an open line of communication. He's always aware of your thoughts, and so you can direct them to him at any time. Not all prayer must be formal prayer. It's just that we cannot remove formal prayer and then think, well, just because God knows my thoughts, then that's generally good enough for communication with him. That's not the case. And so like everything else in the world, this is a balance. Should the bathroom be the primary place you go to pray? Probably not, especially not if you feel that it's disrespectful. If you feel that it's wrong to do and your conscience is speaking out against that, then it's actually wrong for you to go ahead and do it. But your conscience shouldn't be against this because there's not actually a biblical precedent that says it's wrong. After the New Testament, things were much, much more different as far as our relationship with God is concerned. So, should you be praying in the bathroom all the time and that's your only prayer? Absolutely not. But can you pray in the bathroom or study the law of God or the Word of God in the bathroom? Absolutely, no problem.